Hello, welcome to the dialogue on society after COVID-19, jointly organized by the University of Tokyo and Princeton University. I'm HANEDA Masashi, Director of Tokyo College at the University of Tokyo, and I will moderate today's session in collaboration with Professor Jim RAYMO of Princeton University. Hello, Jim.
Hey.
Before starting today's dialogue between two university leaders, I would like to introduce briefly the history of the special partnership between our two universities by using several slides. We have had a long history of academic collaboration in various research fields, of course, but it was in 2013 that the agreement of the strategic partnership were made to support collaborative research and teaching more systematically between the two institutions. In the same year, in 2013, President Ace Gruber of Princeton University, who just started his job this year, visited the University of Tokyo. And this picture is taken just in front of the president's residence at the University of Tokyo. And he met the university leaders of the University of Tokyo at that time. And next year, it was the turn of President Hamada in those days to visit Princeton to celebrate UTokyo Day in Princeton. In 2016, Princeton's professors and staff of the International Office visited UTokyo to celebrate Princeton Day here at the University of Tokyo. Through these exchanges, leaders of both universities have come to know each other well. So within the strategic partnership framework, so far already 27 research projects have been supported financially by the two universities and have got wonderful achievement in each field to range from theoretical computer science and applied mathematics to security studies and disaster recovery. Many different and interesting fields. These are a couple of pictures of global history project Professor Jeremy Edelman and I myself took initiative. We discussed a lot on the doctoral thesis topic of graduate students from diverse perspectives. And I'm sure these meetings were very stimulating, meaningful, and productive for all participants. And the agreement was renewed in 2018 and still effective today. When I was a vice president, I organized a visit of UTokyo's young administrative staff to Princeton to have an opportunity of exchange with their counterpart. This picture is taken at that moment with Provost PRENTICE, who is with us today. Based on these continuing and cooperative activities, a series of dialogues between our two universities of this time is planned. Well, this is a very short history of our strategic partnership. So, Jim, could you introduce your provost?
Yes. First, I will just briefly say a couple of words about my role in this project and partnership, I guess I should say. Compared to Masashi, who's been involved in this from the very, very beginning, I am an absolute newcomer, having arrived at Princeton not so long ago. But when I was asked to take on the role of the Princeton director of the partnership, what a fantastic honor. And I've had the real privilege of working with both Masashi and Hiro, who we'll hear from in a minute, to learn about the history of the partnership, to learn about the range of projects that are currently being supported, and to think hard about some of the initiatives that we like to pursue going forward. I entered in a weird time and haven't actually met anybody here in person yet, but very much look forward to re-establishing our tradition of having Princeton Day and Tokyo Day. And again, I'm just tremendously appreciative of how engaged and committed everybody I've encountered is to the partnership. So with that, it's my privilege to introduce The Princeton participant in today's dialogue, Deborah Prentice, is the Provost of Princeton University, and this is a position that she has served in for the past 4 years, a little over 4 years, and as the second in command, so to speak, here at Princeton, and particularly as the person who is in charge of long-range planning for the university. I think that Debbie is the ideal person at Princeton to be talking to and learning from with respect to the impact of the pandemic on research, teaching, and administration here at Princeton. In addition to her administrative role, she is also the Alexander Stewart 1886 Professor of Psychology, and her research focuses on social norms, particularly the ways in which they shape and constrain human behavior. So welcome, Debbie.
So let me introduce our Executive Vice President, Professor AIHARA Hiroaki. He is a distinguished physicist and a particle experimentalist. It's difficult for me to pronounce this word. He got his PhD at Stanford University and spent more than 10 years in the US before coming back to Japan. He has been serving as a vice president under 3 presidents, which is exceptional and which proves his talent of, how to say, leadership. And he is now in charge of planning, finance, and social outreach under the UTokyo's new president, Fujii. We don't have a post of provost, but in fact, he plays a role of provost in our university. So they will have a very good dialogues at the beginning of this series of dialogue between UTokyo and Princeton. So let's start the dialogue. First of all, although it is not particularly related to today's topic, we can't help touching it, the Nobel Prize. Congratulations, Debbie, for 2 prizes offered to Princeton faculties this time. But Shukuro Manabe's award is particularly important for both of us. Please start this topic, Ayara Sensei.
Very nice to meet you all, and I feel very honored to be invited to join this dialogue. And I'm too used to talk or meet in this 2-dimensional world. I mean, it's been 2 years, right? So I have no problem of meeting you in this 2-dimensional world, but I, of course, would like to visit again Princeton. I've been there many times. I have many friends, and so Princeton is very much close to me, and of course, even in this 2-dimensional world, I feel very close to you and Princeton, and like the professor, the Haneda or Masashi, he told you. So the first of all, the congratulations to you on the 2 Nobel Prize in a row. It's amazing. It's amazing. You have well, maybe it is not the appropriate. Well, you have tons of Nobel Prize winners already, but each one really is special and wonderful. And
they are very, very, very special. And
right.
And Dr. Manabe was a wonderful Nobel winner. I think an unusual winner for the physics prize, right?
Exactly.
In the kind of work he does.
Exactly. Yeah. Like say, yeah. See well, I don't like to log on this one, but the Nobel Prize usually go to the particle physics or the material science, but this is a climate science, and we are very proud of it. The Suki Manabe is alma mater is a School of Science of University of Tokyo, and I was a dean. I served dean of the School of Science, and I know the colleague of Manabe. I knew the name of Professor Manabe because many of my colleagues talk about that. So it concluded. I am very proud of his achievement. I'm very proud of we have this long-standing relationship with Princeton.
Mm-hmm.
So
yes.
please Professor Prentice.
Yeah, no, it's wonderful to meet you too, it's really an honor to be here. Our Tokyo partnership has been a source of wonderful research projects. A lot of people across disciplines have found colleagues and fruitful kinds of exchanges. So it's an honor to be here. It is wonderful to be here the week that Professor Manabe won the Nobel Prize. I was at the press conference, and actually there were a lot of Japanese media there. It was very impressive. I don't know. I mean, I was amazed they could all show up. You know, I'm not sure where they all came from, right? Because it was announced, and several hours later we had a lot of Japanese media present for the press conference that honored him. So that was a great celebration for us, and we share that with you. We share that with the University of Tokyo. So yes.
So Jim, please ask your question first.
Okay, would you? We'll start with the first question, and we like to start broad. Let's cast a wide net to begin, and ask you both about the current situation at your respective universities with respect to research, teaching in the context of the ongoing pandemic. And I think one thing that we'd love to hear a little bit more about is how close or how far you feel things are to being back to normal, or will they ever go back to normal? And finally, this is a three-part question. Maybe that's not the best way to ask questions, but I'll throw a lot out there, like I said. Is there any way that you think that the pandemic has made the university more resilient? Surely there are many ways in which it has had a negative impact, but would be very interested to hear if you can think of any ways in which the long-term strength may have been enhanced by the experiences that we've gone through over the past couple of years. Debbie, why don't you go ahead and take that first, yeah.
Okay, I'll be happy to. So how are things on our campus? They're actually, I think, quite good in the sense that we are all back in person. All of the students are back. All of the research labs are operating, and we are not having major outbreaks of COVID. We have on our campus a requirement that everybody be vaccinated. So everybody is vaccinated, or almost everybody. There are some exemptions, but they're very narrow. So it's almost entirely, it's about 98 or 99% vaccinated. And we are all still tested every week. People who the 1 to 2% who are not vaccinated are tested twice a week. Everybody else is tested once a week, so that we are constantly surveilling the population. And so far that has been sufficient to keep the virus under control. There are a couple positive cases, the people are isolated, and everybody goes on. And what that means is that we've had a fairly normal 6 weeks of a fall semester so far. We've all gotten very used to wearing masks, but it's really not a big deal. And we're present in classrooms, we're present in laboratories. I think the only thing that is not back to normal actually is the global side of things. There's a lot less travel, and that has implications for the research of people who do their work internationally. I think, there are still many of our graduate students who cannot access their research sites, and that's very challenging to have it be close to getting close to 2 years of not being able to access your research site. So there are pockets of people who are still experiencing the challenges, but that's less because of what things are, the conditions on campus than the conditions in the world, are still not fully back. So how close to normal? It's for most of us, most of the time, it's pretty normal. still doing performing arts, which we do a lot of, and athletics, and I mean all the sort of full range of things that we do in addition to academics, in addition to education and research, we're doing now. It feels normal. Feels like a college camp, a U.S. college campus. Feels like Stanford, right? Feels like campuses that you know and love. And in terms of, has it made us more resilient? I would say absolutely, absolutely. I mean, we built our own testing facility. This is how we do our surveillance testing. We actually have that capacity now in-house. Built our own testing facility and staffed up. And I mean, we've had to make a lot of changes and make them quickly and communicate them broadly. And we had no real experience doing that before. But those are good skills to learn as an organization, and we've learned them. And I think it's certainly, I think, made us stronger in many ways.
Thanks very much, Debbie.
You don't have. So I'm sorry, but you don't have any online lecture anymore.
We do not.
No,
we do not. All teaching is in person.
In person, okay.
In
so
person.
That's a great difference between Princeton and UTokyo,
Right.
maybe. Yeah, I'm sorry to intervene.
No.
So,
Okay.
Hiro, how about at the University of Tokyo?
Right,
The
like
same issues, yeah.
Right, like Masashi said, we are. I can't say we are back to normal. We are not. In fact, we are not back to normal yet. Right, we are trying to. Well, first of all, the campus is closed to the outside people. So without pass, the showing the guard, you can't get in.
Mhm.
So it's closed, and I think we have still more the online courses than in-person the courses. We gradually allow students back to the classes, but it's still limited. Yeah, in a sense, we are just a few days ago, the declaration of a state of emergency just has been lifted. So we are still a little bit scared in a sense. Many people feel that way. And so obviously we try to get back to normal because somehow the viruses have sort of disappeared without telling us. Yes, we haven't made a decision to open the campus yet, and we haven't decided to encourage the in-person the classes to the faculty yet. In fact, right. So that's how it is. Let's see. Yeah, I don't know what where does this difference came from. Maybe I don't know. Partly the speed of the rate of the vaccination, but actually, so the total vaccination, the fraction is more than the one in US now. We somehow surpassed how you vaccinate the people. It's yeah, we quickly increase the number of the vaccinated people, right?
Yeah, we here in the United States, I think we sort of stuck at 60% or something
Right.
like that. But in many places, including at Princeton, vaccine mandates then can in fact get the percentage up higher. Your situation sounds very like our situation last spring before we had the vaccine mandate when most things were online and everybody was still very afraid. We thought we might be there this fall too, but it has turned out that with the vaccination mandate and the testing, we're able to keep the campus under control.
And
Debbie, do you
maybe
think
we
that
could
there's
come back
any-
this.
Oh, sorry.
Well, sorry, later. But it's interesting that I can observe the difference between U.S. and sort of atmosphere of the U.S. and Japan. So we Japanese well, I shouldn't say yes, but the Japanese government or maybe Japanese society in general used sort of the group pressure, peer group pressure to suppress the the people's action, mobility, and we are still using the pressure to encourage the vaccination. We can't mandate them. I don't think the government will ever mandate the vaccination, and of course, university administration cannot the mandate every single the student be vaccinated. We can't even really ask them unless they are willing to. Are you already vaccinated or not? That we had a lot of discussion, but still we decided not to ask specifically. Some people thought this is a personal, the information, right? So observing from distance, it's in a sense very interesting how the U.S. and how Japan run the society in a sense.
You sound like a sociologist, Hiro.
Well, yeah, job of the physicist is actually observe, right? So observation is my
I agree. I do think that peer pressure works a lot better in Japan, and it works because in the United States it can go any which way, right? It depends on your peers, right? And it can lead you toward vaccinations or away from them. And so we have to have mandates. We have to be able to tell people what to do in a situation of an emergency.
And as far as the resilience is concerned, well, of course, because of this. The pandemic, I hope we will be more resilient by learning this, by experiencing this difficulty in real time. Of course, we knew things like this could happen. There are lots of books about that, but we are not really prepared. We are not, in particular, once again, from my background, we knew the digitization, the ICT, including information and digital technology, will be important to prepare things like this. Minimize or mitigate the impact of the disaster or the pandemic. We knew we can use the modern technology to do that. However, we realize we are far behind implementing this technology for this. So hindsight, we are not. We haven't been prepared for this, but now we learned. So we must accelerate to deploying the technologies, information and digital technologies, for us to be better prepared for next one. That's what I think.
Shall we move to the next question, if please? Yeah, please. You have already started to talk on this topic, but from the perspective of university administration, what has been the greatest impact of the pandemic of this time on various aspects of the university activities, particularly on research, education, and management? David, you said that you have already returned to normal, but in case of Japan, we will never return to normal because we have already passed one border to the next step. So, but anyway, this is the impact of, I'd say, the pandemic of this time. But how do you think about what is the most important impact to the university this time? Hiro, you start?
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah. The impact, I don't know, that's the good word impact is the right word or not. But the thing is, I realized we made students suffer from this. I feel sorry for them. In particular, freshmen and the sophomore, the undergraduates are frustrated. In fact, many of them are frustrated. We think, that we provided all those the help or even the financial support, and we let them learn from online, the classes. But it actually, many students are frustrated because they can't talk to each other in person. For them, in person, the contact to the others more important than maybe older people like us. So that we realize. So and then the thing is, we can't give that time back to them. That's what it is. They have to live with this. So that's the impact for us, in a sense. For a long time, I don't have a good answer for that at this point, but somehow we really need to we realize this, and then somehow we have to figure out how we could let's say compensate is the good word again or not, but for that particular their suffering. So I think that's the biggest impact, really. The students suffered most. And then from administrative point of view, of course, let's see, research, the professors are pretty good, actually. They have already established personal connections to the outside world, and then they have network. So well-established professors didn't suffer much. We can always use these technologies, take advantage of these technologies. And one more thing, if I may, this pandemic made us to control the budget. we lost money. We lost the handle to control the cash flow, things like that. So it made us difficult to have the overall the financial management. Right.
Yeah, thank you very much. I have to underline the difference of the living condition of students between UTokyo and Princeton. In case of Princeton, they are living on campus. But on the other hand, the University of Tokyo, students are living outside the campus, and they need to come to the campus. And that's why we are not brave enough to organize a lot of lectures in person, because they are not isolated from the outside world. But on the contrary, in Princeton, they are always on campus. So that's quite different. But that is my comment. Debbie, could you repeat what do you think about the impact?
Actually, I agree. I mean, the impact on the students has been the most strong. I mean, that I completely agree with everything everything that you said. They lost a year and a half, and we can't give it back. And we see it in the students the new students who are entering. I mean, they aren't the same as students used to be, and we see it in the students who are continuing. They're very happy to be back. Our students, I mean, thrilled to be back. So when you can have them back, it will be a joyous time. It has been wonderful for us to have our students back, but the loss is real. I mean, it's not recoverable, and we can't compensate for it, though we are trying to do that, right? It's a natural, you want your students to have a complete experience, but that's been very, very difficult. I agree also that the faculty in general are fine. I think some faculty, especially those with young children, because all of the schools closed, right? So the people with young children, I think, have had a very challenging period of trying to get work done. But we gave people additional time on their tenure clocks, and we were able to compensate the faculty more easily for what they were losing, those that were struggling during the pandemic with family responsibilities and so on. So in general, I think the faculty are fine. We had something of a wild ride with the budget. It looked like it was going to, it looked terrible early on, and then in the United States, the stock market recovered, which for us, because our school is very endowment dependent, meant that our budget recovered. Nonetheless, there was a lot of, there were a lot of one-time expenses associated with this, but we've actually ended up in a fairly decent financial situation, but it was a wild ride. Especially at first, it was crazy. So yeah, so that's what I would say.
All right, thank you both very much. I want to change tack just a little bit and ask a question that's much more micro than these very large, sort of high-level questions, and that is to think about the relationships between the university and the surrounding community. And curious to what extent has there been any issues, conflict, or what have the relationships in general been like during the pandemic between the university and the surrounding community in ways that may be different from normal times? And I think that being at the University of Tokyo, you are in a very, very different neighborhood community situation than we are at Princeton. So I'll ask you first. Yeah.
Right. So Debbie, if you have a chance to visit our campus, in the center of Tokyo, you will see we have the walls around the fence, fenced up the campus. So once we close the gate, nobody can go pass through. So for year and a half, more than a year and a half, almost 2 years, we have closed those the gates to the neighbors. Obviously, they are not happy. We have the big campus in the neighborhood, right? So normally they can just go through our campus to get to the other side where dentist to see the dentist at the other side. They can't do that. They have to go all around the campus. So again, this made us realize we didn't, as a national university, we pay a lot of attention to the relationship with government. Where we normally we go to the funding agency, government funding agency all the time, and then talk to them in the government. But we haven't paid enough attention to the local people, local government. So that was, in fact, there was a background. They are feeling University of Tokyo is not paying attention to build up the good relationship with neighbors, and it's not evident. It's even more so this pandemic made us realize we are not good at communicate with the people around us. In fact, so that was the real sense. Again, this is a learning process. It took us a long time then, but now because of that, we try to talk to them and try to solve the problem. So our med school is open for the vaccination for the neighbors too. So they may, that created a little bit the easy feeling for them. So so far that's what it is.
So Debbie, I'm very curious about Princeton. I live very close to campus, and I'm not sure I know whether there's been any kinds of issues with the community.
I wouldn't say there have been issues. So our situation, you're in a huge city with a fence around you. We're in a small town that's largely dependent on us. So during the pandemic, I mean, we were closed for the fall semester last year. In the fall of 2020, we were effectively closed. And the town suffered. I mean, so we have a dependency relationship in that the decisions that we make for ourselves have implications for the town, right? We have partial control over their fate. And that's always, I think, a somewhat fraught relationship to have. And so what I would say is the pandemic brought that into high relief, right? I mean, in other words, it made it more apparent that they're dependent and heightened tensions a little bit that way. We also had some students living in town. Usually all of our students, as Masashi said, live on campus. Some students did want to come back when we weren't inviting them back, and they lived in town. That's a little bit new for our town to have college students living there. And it cuts both ways, really. I mean, it's both a positive and a negative in the sense that at least somebody was renting the spaces, which was a good thing. But it was 18 to 22-year-olds, which I think alarms everybody. So college students who might be partying and not observing proper COVID public health restrictions. So I think it's just been tense, is what I would say. I don't think the pandemic. I think the pandemic put a lot of stress on all relationships, right? And certainly the relationship to the town was stressed as well, despite the fact that we tried to do a lot for our town. I mean, and we have, we tried to support businesses, and we tried to, we actually gave students vouchers to go buy food in town to support the local businesses. We've opened our vaccine clinics and our to the townies and so on and so forth. But it's been a challenging time.
Thank you both for that. That's very interesting. And clearly context makes a big difference. So Masashi, back to you.
Okay. So let's talk on the phrase back to normal. After 18 months of pandemic, do you have anything new in your mind? Do you rethink the role of the university? Or how do you think about this idea? Is it okay for us to stand on the same place as before after this pandemic? We have got a lot of experience, knowledge now. And do you reaffirm a belief in the value of how we have done things before? So my question is, do you want to still maintain the activities in the past, or do you have something new to move to the next step? Debbie?
I'm first on this one. Okay.
Yeah.
What I would say, I would say, for me personally, and I think this is a question that reasonable people can disagree about, right? So our president, for example, is all about going back to doing things exactly as they were before. He's committed to that. What I would say is, I feel differently than that, although I do believe that we're going to go back and do a lot of things like we did before. But it's because we've learned how important they are, right? It's because with this disruption, we've discovered that, for example, in-person education for some reason is just it really does matter to have in-person education. That's not to say that you can't do some lectures online and so on and so. I mean, it's great to have that tool, but it's bringing students to campus is a critical part of educating them. And I wouldn't have known that I'm not sure I still understand how important it is. But you can get by with remote education, but it's not the same, right? And the dynamics of it aren't the same, and the value of it is not the same. So there we're going back, but we're going back because we've discovered something new. For our workforce, for our staff, I think it's still been a little bit challenging to get people to want to come into the office every day, even though it's safe, but they've discovered that they can work at home, or that they can work on a more flexible schedule. And they feel that they can be as effective that way. So for our staff, I think it's managing our staff and thinking about how much flexibility we want to allow them, and who can work at home and who can't. I think it's a big change for that. And then what I would say is I think on the scholarship side, I think we reaffirm much of what we've done, but I do think, and we're going to talk more about this, I hope in the next question, but how we do international, global research and teaching, I think it's a question to me, right? Again, I think in a lot of ways the pandemic it's both reaffirmed the value of physical co-presence, but also taught us what we can do without it, right? So how now we think about when we want to travel and when we don't want to travel, and for what, and to me it's a profound change that I'm just beginning to absorb, and that I see my colleagues just beginning to absorb now.
Thank you.
How about your idea,
Well, let's see. I agree with the most of the things Debbie said. So let's see. First of all, I don't think core value of the university will change. It's gonna stay. We stick to this the core value that's even enhanced from the research point of view or the educational point of view, related to the pursuit of the excellence in the research and the education. Those the value will never change. We even feel stronger. We must go or pursue the excellence in research and the education. Then, of course, once again, we learned a lot in real time. So from this, so we are physically sort of restricted, but we learn how to go around this. But we learned how, the things we cannot go around this problem. So as the maybe administration, we have to take advantage of this learning process. Therefore, so about the teaching and learning, but we are planning to take advantage of this the technology, the online learning, online teaching. The funny thing is in the Department of Physics, students love more online courses than in person. This is a heavily biased group of students, so they think they can, get the more sort of the knowledge easily, and they can ask the professors or the teachers easily over the online than actually in the in-person class. But that's not for the everybody. But so some students love to actually use this technology, and the others not, of course. So that's one thing. And so the conclusion is, I don't think we can go back to where we were 2 years ago. Whether you like or not, things will change, things will move on. and it's fine. The students will adopt it to it. That the staff members, yes, also they love to some people love to work at home, because again, this is Tokyo, so a long commute. Some people take 2-hour one way every day, so 4 hours on the commute. They don't want to do that, right? So those people want to stay at home to work, and again, we're gonna keep encouraging people to work at home if they prefer to do that. Mm-hmm. So that's let's see what else. So that's about it for now. Bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I want to follow up with both of you just real quickly on an issue you both touched upon in this last little bit of conversation, and that's about remote learning. And I think that Debbie, you and Hiro both, you shared some similar thoughts about the role of remote learning, and some very different thoughts. I think it sounds like Princeton, we're in different places, I guess, but has a very different view perhaps of the role of remote learning, the future of remote learning. But if you could just say a few more words about what role you see for this going forward, either in our own universities or perhaps more broadly. And I know there's discussion about sort of a bifurcation of education in the US at least. And I'd just love to hear a little bit more about what you think, either locally or more broadly, the role of remote learning will be going forward. Debbie, why don't you go ahead?
Sure. I think all of us now have had a taste of it. And, so we've all learned some skills. I think we now have to decide higher education in the United States is so heterogeneous, right? There's so many different forms. For many organizations, remote learning, I think, is going to, increase a lot, if for no other reason, because it's a lot less expensive to provide it. So budgetarily strapped, challenged organizations can turn to remote learning, and no doubt will. I think for those of us who have a choice, for those of us who have stronger budgets, what I would say for us is I don't think we now all know how to, we all now have the tools. I don't think we've yet decided, but now I feel like now starts the conversation about how we want to use them. Right. I do think, it's not just the physics students who like remote learning. All students actually prefer to learn math remotely, turns out. Like math classes get much higher evaluations when they're remote. And I heard this from my counterpart, the provost at Stanford, actually. She said all of the math classes, the evaluations went up. And it's partly because you can teach it, right? It's very structured. I mean, you can teach it, and it's a lot of just, getting them to do problem sets, right? So you can teach it remotely, and it takes the anxiety out of it, right? Because so many students find math classes, if they're not fast at math, they find it anxious. So that's interesting, right? Maybe we should think about that. Maybe we should think about other kinds of, and certainly I think many professors have found really creative ways to use the technology. So what I'm hopeful for our university is that we can start a conversation now about, enriching what we can do pedagogically with these amazing new tools.
And how about the University of Tokyo?
Yeah, that's very interesting.
Yeah.
So I think now we need to design how best we can perform the education, combining remote learning, remote teaching, and in-person the learning and teaching. I think the in-person actually the class is in fact very important to communicate students with sort of the in-person energy. For example, if you are sitting in the same room with the professor in front of you, I think there's something you can feel, or even the professors can convey something which may not be clearly described but to the students. So that the value of that something is even more important now. I think we can appreciate that, and I hope the students can experience that. They are feeling something from the teachers or professors just in front of them. But at the same time, yes, to learn the skills, for example, mathematics is in fact, you can teach, you have to learn it in the end by yourself, by actually calculating or solving the problem, and take as much time as you want. Students are different, so they progress in at the different rate or speed. Mm-hmm. So it's okay for them to take as much time as they like. So now our job is to design or maximize our remote learning, the skills to provide the best suited the education. So maybe custom-made education teaching for individual students.
Thank you. That's extremely interesting. Now, Masashi?
Okay, so the time is now running up. So the last question from our side, that is the international collaboration. Debbie has already touched this, but what do you think about the value of the cross-national partnership or collaboration like ours, and what should be the future of this type of collaboration after the pandemic? I want to I want to listen to your view on this point. Debbie first.
Me first, okay. I think so. I think that the vitality and the need for these kinds of partnerships is as great as ever. But I think they require, and I think as with teaching, the tools that we now have to carry them out are much broader. And we can now do much more remotely than I think we ever would have thought possible before. And I think we're quite a bit more experienced and wiser about what things can be done well remotely. That said, I think the value of travel and co-presence and being dislocated and seeing things, actually seeing them in person, the pandemic has really heightened our recognition of that value as well, right? So I would anticipate that we'll be able to think more creatively about when we want to be together, when we need to travel, when we need to visit. I mean, I've never been to Tokyo, and Masashi, we've met a number of times. Always at Princeton.
Please come, certainly.
Yeah, always at Princeton. I truly don't know. I could meet you 100 more times, and we could talk over Zoom, and I'm still not going to know anything really about Japan if I don't get on a plane and go there, right? But I think if I were to go and spend, some time in Japan, then there would be a whole lot we could do, right? There would be a whole lot we could talk about before I traveled again or you traveled again. I think, so just the whole choreography of these things, I think, will change. But they're still so critically important to knowledge production and communication and sharing, and they still involve us getting on planes and seeing each other in person.
Thank you. Hiro, I know that you and I have talked about this a little bit, but yeah, please, yeah.
Well, so never underestimate eating local food in person, right? That's probably the most important thing you do when you travel, and then you learn a lot, right? And I missed in fact, I missed the time over the airplane. I love to spend the long time on the airplane. I get to read something out there. So, and then in fact that the international exchange or relationship made us come back to that the resilience question, make us more resilient to anything, the unpredicted. So we're connected, so we can take the rely on the knowledge acquired by the people on the other side of the world to solve our problem, maybe. So I think important is we should even enhance this networking of, let's say, at least from academic institutions to share the experience, to share the knowledge. So we can have the better skill to solve the problems, and we will be better prepared for anything beyond this pandemic. That's what I think.
Jim?
That I think is the last question that we had prepared. So I guess in closing, I'd like to ask if there's anything else that you guys would like to contribute that you think we haven't covered. Is there anything that you think is critically important to this conversation that we haven't had a chance yet to discuss?
Actually, I have one. Well, Jim and I talked about that. Like Masashi told you, we have a long this strategic partnership. And this was the first one we established at Tokyo as the strategic partnership, and it's been going so well. So the program has been focused on the exchange of people, exchange of students, exchange of researchers. But now, after let's see how many years, I forgot, 10 years or so, Jim and I think we should build something real, something physical. We should establish some institution, real institutions, not in the virtual world, the real institution, maybe on both sides, but so then the permanent institution in a sense. So that's ambition, right? Okay. And in order to do that, of course, we need the resources and the fundraising, things like that, all kinds of difficulty. But maybe we are ready for it. That's what I think. That's
I think that's great.
But what kind of institution you mean?
Well, we can model from Tokyo College, or actually institution focused on international policy, history, or whatever we feel comfortable with.
So in your plan, Tokyo College should work very hard.
Right.
Okay. More collaboration with Princeton, some other universities.
Right.
Okay.
Well, that's sorry, that's my ambition.
Sounds interesting. It sounds interesting. Sounds promising. What I would say, the thing I was going to say, sticking with the pandemic theme, was just that I do think the pandemic, because it hit us all, and it hit it, and if you listen to our responses, I think I hear much more that we have much more in common than we have in difference. I think our contexts are different, and our current, where we are and coming out of this, we're in slightly different places, but everything else sounds very familiar to me in what you're saying. And I think I've had that experience with my peers in the United States as well, right? So we've relied a lot on relationships and networks within the United States to try to solve these problems too. And how are you solving it? And how are you solving it, right? Getting ideas from each other. I think the stronger bonds and networks and communication networks, I think I'd like to see that continue. I think for all the heterogeneity of our institutions, many of us, I mean, certainly University of Tokyo and Princeton have a common mission, and you know, are pursuing that mission under these crazy circumstances. And I like to think the pandemic has made our relationship stronger.
I think that sounds like a very ambitious and optimistic note to wrap this conversation up with. And I would really like to thank both of you for your time, your willingness to participate in this. I'll turn things over to Masashi, but as he said earlier, this is the first in a series of dialogues related to the impact of the pandemic in many different realms. And again, just a tremendous thanks to both of you for starting the series off so well. Masashi, any closing words?
Thank you very much. So, Debbie, please come to Tokyo, or I will visit you certainly in the near future. Your official visit will be very welcome. Certainly.
Thank you. Thank you. I will come.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Nice to meet you.
Yes.